Wow.
I'm like, yes, there's so many lessons in life, and we can serve a higher purpose around the next corner for our God if we get past ourselves. And that one moment, it all came aligned, and I'm like, yes, I got past myself. I didn't roll up in a ball, and I just realized that every moment, the next moment, we could be serving a higher purpose if we just get past ourselves.
You mentioned something about dying for your country. And you know, of course, that Jesus died for all of us. So does it make it a little bit easier for you, Mary, to surrender and trust than it might be for some of us who, such as myself, struggle with the idea of the total absence of self, the way Jesus had on the cross?
I think it's a gift. Less than 1% of our nation is served in the military. It's a gift to be able to get past yourself like that. And I would wish military service on just about anyone. Serve your country, serve your community any way you can. Because once you get past that humanity of it, you're like, okay, that's going to happen to all of us. One of the classes I taught was writing your leadership legacy. If you Google it, you can see a piece of paper. You can sit down and ask yourself these 10 questions. And I did it in China for my dissertation, and the feedback I got was not so positive. With the younger generation, they're like, this is depressing to talk about what my legacy is going to be after I've led, and the whole exercise says, all right, you're going to lead your life and you're going to have a legacy. Why don't you live intentionally today and decide what your legacy is going to be? Let's write it out so that tomorrow you can live aligned to it. And a lot of us are in denial about that. I think it's a blessing to say, I take an oath, possibly, to do what I need to for my country, but really, we should all start our day that way.
So doing what you do has helped grow your faith?
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't be the person I am today for sure. My twin, Marcia Weiss, who flies Blackhawks in the Army, she went in the Army first, and back on the farm, we learned how to work hard. We learned a community of service to the farm and the family. But if I've been in Wisconsin for the past week talking to 14 different organizations about the Air Force because I absolutely believe in the opportunity that it offers you to get past yourself. If you had asked my family back then, and this is a story I share with school kids, if you had asked them, hey, do you think Mary's going to be, a colonel, a doctor, or a pilot? I think the answer would have been no, she needs to stay on the farm. Out of love, we need to protect her. But sometimes, we need
Why?
Why? Because, we need to protect everyone, right?
I don't know. I didn't know if it was everyone. It sounded like that's maybe the way they thought about you rather than your brother or sisters.
Right, but there were C-130s flying around this town all the time. If you look up, you might see one. But no one when I was that young said, hey, would you like to fly these planes one day? But the Air Force did. They said, you want to learn Russian? We'll teach you Russian. You want to go serve in a Muslim country? You can go lead the Bilateral Cooperation Office, which allowed me to get a contract signed between two governments that they weren't able to get signed for years because they didn't speak their language. And so when I went in there speaking Russian, I said, this translation doesn't match that one, and that's why they're not signing it, So we need to really understand the culture of the people.
So do you pray? What's a part of your spiritual life in addition to all these amazing things you've accomplished?
Do I pray? Absolutely pray. It's a constant communication, constant conversation, right? And the moment I think, well, maybe I'll just give up right now and, take a sidestep, or could I just get behind the camera for a while? God has a different plan.
Have you always done that? When did you start praying?
I think when I started realizing who I was, which is, getting off the farm and going to take on the world and going to college, that was an eye-opening time. Flying in combat, that's tough too. I think it's all these small decisions where you could make the wrong one or you could find yourself and become a stronger person. I think it's about the micro level of leadership for yourself.
Do you ask him for help?
Absolutely, every day.
Every day?
Every day.
How do you grade him like I do? God gets some bad grades from me once in a while. But
it's like
this isn't my faith. This is your faith, so I apologize for bringing that up. How does your faith, your relationship with him work? Is it the same as when you first started praying? Do you do it more often? Your military, joining the military, does that influence?
It's constant, so it's not more often. The fact that we can still have prayers when we start our military formal events and we still can have our faith, I'm happy about that. Has it changed? Absolutely. It just has humbled me, right? Anytime I try to get in his face and say, this is not what I had planned, I eventually end up eating my words and saying, right, I didn't have the right plan, It's humbling.
So for all you've accomplished, I mean, this is heady stuff. You've never had an issue with humility?
Well, have I ever? No, let's see.
Or the lack thereof?
People might say that, which I would feel terrible about, right? Because wearing this uniform can be somewhat intimidating. We like it that way in certain in certain exchanges, right? But humility, I'd like to say that I'm more humble every day, right? But you can't be too humble if you want to get through pilot training. So you have to prove yourself first.
How much interaction of faith is there among people in the military? And is there my assumption would be there's somewhat of a limitation of not wanting to go too far or not to be given the kind of toughness that's required.
Right, which seems like the opposite of humility, right? What is true strength? What is power? Is it your ability to push someone else over or stand strong in adversity? That's why I like the idea of, teaching faith to students from Napoleon Hill's perspective, starting there, believe in yourself so you can believe in a higher power. And leaving room, our military chaplains are great. Our chaplains have to be able to, and I like that your podcast leaves room for this. Our chaplains have to be able to preach to our atheists in service, right? And that's what they tell you. Spiritual fitness is not, like you say in your podcast, it's not, my spiritual fitness is not your label. It's to say, where are you and where do you want to be with your spiritual fitness, with whatever you call that. It's definitely made my Christianity stronger. But I was in a Muslim country for over 1.5 years, right? And once we start judging, that's when we start judging others. That's the challenge. There's just so much we can do in the secular world. One of the presentations I just gave was on ethics of interpersonal engagement. And I love the idea that non-defensiveness is the only ethical approach to engaging with others, non-defensiveness. So if you say something about, the fact that, the Air Force, isn't as good as the Army, if I get defensive about it, I'm not responding to the world ethically. I just think there's such a lesson in that, especially when everybody's somewhat offended in the world. So having faith is being able, I start with not judging others, accepting them and making them feel loved. That is my goal, which would require a lot of humility. So I believe that the breakfast of leaders is feedback. And my students will tell you that. And how do we stay humble is through feedback. So, I'm sure you've read a lot about that in some of the books you've been reading.
Right, but there's a conflict there potentially. Some people may see it that way. You can only go so far with your faith. Is that a fair analysis?
Where would that limit be? I've yet to.
I don't know. I think that was my question. The limit could just in the military, that you can talk about it and it's one of the 4 things, but when you try to influence others or you speak too much about it, what's the accepted part of it versus, you can't go that far.
We have a spiritual domain and we all need to work to be able to have those conversations. So whatever arena that is, and we have to keep working on that. I can't speak for the whole Air Force on that, but... No,
you can in my faith. You speak for you.
Good, absolutely. Yeah, and spiritual fitness is is serving a higher purpose, the people around me, and getting past myself, and helping them find their higher purpose. It's a tough one to put into words. It is.
No, I think you did a pretty good job of it.
Thanks.
What's ahead in
question.
my faith? What's ahead for you? You've dealt with some tough things.
Well, this is only the beginning. I do know that my calling is to use leadership scholarship to better advise leadership practices and behaviors. I mean, that's my calling every morning. That gets me out of bed, right? It's talking to people about what are you willing to get out of bed early for, or what keeps you up at night. You know, can you deal with those two things? And if you find what you're willing to get out of bed early for, like scholarship or leadership, and using it to become more aligned with your higher purpose, that's my calling. And, you know, I have, like I said, I've seen miracles through it, helping people unleash their higher power. So my orders will end. I'll be done, and I'll leave the flying to the cadets that I'm training now, and I know that you're in good hands. I'll sleep well at night, but I'll come back to Wisconsin and see what opportunities there are here for me in the next year.
I would assume that it would be in a similar venue, though not necessarily as oriented toward the military. But your belief in this is clearly very strong, and the need to have someone
Yes.
help the new best generation ever.
Oh, they're good. You know, the Pygmalion effect, right? Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. So do you believe you can? I really believe in that, and I'd love to help the next generation. Teaching at the university, so I'm at Embry-Riddle. I'll probably keep helping them online or through some honors events in the future. I'd love to. But I'd love to bring it back to my local community. I mean, we have some hardworking people here that I'd love to reconnect with.
You have done exactly what we hope for, and that is your faith isn't the same as everyone else, but it is your faith.
Nice.
Yes.
I agree.
There's nothing more to add to that. We could probably go on forever, other than to say thank you for stepping out and sharing, Mary Tobolt, about your faith. It really is a gift for us, and certainly a gift, we hope for all of you out there. If you're touched by this, keep in mind, tell people to just go to YouTube channel and write out My Faith with Homer and Pip, and today with Mary Tobolt. Merry Christmas to you and your family. God's blessings, and thank you again.
Merry Christmas to you. Thanks for the time. Thanks for inviting me.